Hey, what's up, comrades? Welcome back to Nikke Storytime. So today, go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'd appreciate it if you did. And then we're gonna talk about we're gonna have the bond stories for Wardress, which are Mihara and Uni, which were both introduced last week in the chapter 2 story time. And then we're gonna talk about Mighty Toys, which is the second event that came out for Nikke, Goddess of Victory. So Mihara is upset about something. She explains to the commander that she is not getting the same amount of stimuli that she used to, and that she feels like she just needs something else to give her like a sense of feeling and a sense of kind of existence, if you will. Well, she's talking to you in the counters, and Ainz doesn't understand. So Mihara shows her by sharing her feelings with Ainz and then jabbing herself, like cutting herself, like the fuck. And Ainz is like, okay, I get it, I guess. And so Mihara is pretty down about the whole situation, and the counters feel bad for her. So Rapping Neon and Ainz convince you, kind of force you to go with Mihara and help her find new sensations and new ways to feel about things. And you don't exactly know how to feel about it, but I guess you're going to help, or I guess we, as the commander. And Mihara mentioned something about us having potential. Later on, we're still having a hard time finding a way or figuring out a way for Mihara to gain new sensations, to feel something again. And so we reach out to Neon and Ainz for help. They suggest taking her to the gym, because that's a way to feel something and to, get your sweat on, I guess. And so we go and invite Mihara to join us at the gym, which she does. At the gym, we meet up with Rumani, who's another Nikke. There's a whole squad based around like working out and sweating and stuff. And so she's one of those, and she kind of runs the gym here. And so she's like, yeah, that sounds good. Mira's like, that sounds good. And initially she's kind of surprised, but then she's like, yeah, let's do it. And so, because exercise can be a healthy form of stimulation, right? So she starts training Mihara, who begins to moan erotically while she's being trained, because she's pushing herself and feeling some pain, which Mihara's really into. And so, and pain and humiliation, because that's who she is. And and then a lot of the men in the gym start to get distracted, being like, what the fuck is going on? In like a sensual way. And so Rumani's like, get the fuck out. And we get expelled from the gym. As we're walking through the park, we're talking about what Mihara wants, and how we're gonna go about it. And she hands us a leash that is connected to like a chain leash, essentially, that is attached to like a choker that she's wearing. And she's like, walk me. God damn. So we're walking her around and we're kind of contemplating what it means to live, kind of like we did with Neon. Like what are our habits, what gives us purpose and existence and all that kind of stuff. And at that point, we're talking about this with Mihara, and she mentions that she's enjoying the humiliation of being led around with a collar. Suddenly, we hear a noise, and we both hide, as it's a couple kids running around, and we want to preserve their innocence and not bring them into like our depraved sexual experience. After walking around some more, we hear another noise, and we hide again. This time, it's Exia and Novel, two other Nikkes. They're complaining about missing some event they wanted to go to and all this stuff. And as Mihara is about to step out and say, hi, we pull her back with the chain leash, which she likes. This also makes some noise, which causes Exia and Novel to look around and start to investigate. They don't find anything eventually, after not finding anything, they leave. Or not. As we shortly get a text from Exia teasing us that she hopes we enjoy ourselves. When this is brought up with Mihara, she mentions that she angled herself on purpose so that the reflection of like a puddle of water or something would be seen by Exia, and that she would see what's going on, just because she wanted to see how we would react. We continue to drag Mihara through alleyways and kind of like out of like the way where people are not necessarily going to see. until we again hear some footsteps. This time we decide, as the commander, not to hide what we're doing. And we come across 2 adult men who are shocked by what they see. But whatever. Fuck them. Get our kink on or whatever. The last bit of running into people, we run into Poli and Miranda, who are part of ACPU. They're like police Nikkes. And we get into a big argument where they're like, we're going to arrest you. This is depraved. You can't treat Nikkes like this. And then we argue with them and eventually get to the point where Poli and Miranda can't figure out anything illegal that we're doing. So they have to let us go despite their protestations. And I misspoke. Now we run into, I'm trying to remember the name of their squad, but we're accosted by Previty, Eula, and Admin, who are kind of like a military-based Nikke troop or squad. And again, they're like, what are you doing? What the fuck's going on? Blah, 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 blah. Mihara sort of sexually assaults or at least sexually harasses Previty in a way that makes her very uncomfortable. And so she runs off because she's like, ah! And after this dubious interaction, Eula and Admini also run off with her. And then lastly, we come across Leader, who's another Nikke, and her dog, Bolt. And she is like interested in what's going on with us because she's heard rumors just kind of sprouting around. People are talking about us leading Mihara around by a chain. So she comes to check it out, and because she has an idea, she's like, oh, you guys, I have this like sweet leash that I use for Bolt, because to her she thought we were walking a dog, and then she sees that it's a man, a commander walking a Nikke, and she's like, what? And at that point she also runs off being embarrassed about the whole situation. Afterwards we're just back at the park hanging out, the commander and Mihara. Lord. And we get some interesting backstory with her at this point. She's very impressed that we adapted so well, that we were able to embrace our like kink side, I guess. But she mentions that she wasn't always like this. She wasn't always into like pain or humiliation and stuff. And that before she became a Nikke, she was actually like a sick girl in the hospital. She had some sort of degenerative disease where she couldn't feel like anything, and it was slowly eating away at like her organs and her ability to feel, to move or to talk at all. And she was getting to a point where she was kind of resigned, like, well, I guess this is life, I guess this is what's going to happen, I got to just make the best of it or whatever. But this changed one day when she was laying there, and she had some old friends come to visit her, and they were like crying and talking about how they feel so bad for her and all this stuff. And she got really mad about the whole situation. It was like, man, fuck these chicks. They can do whatever. Why can't I feel anything? Why can't anything happen to me? And at some point she bit her lip and felt pain. Like she was able to move her mouth, and she bit her lip and she felt pain, and it was like exhilarating because, she couldn't feel anything at that point. So this is like one thing she could do. So she kept doing it to like the chagrin of the doctors and other people. She would bite her lip all the time and just like relish in the pain that she felt. To a point where she became obsessed with pain, with feeling pain. Because at least it's something. At some point later on, a young girl / Sayuan showed up to ask her if she would like to become a Nikke, which she agreed to. And then here we are. She became her idolized self, because that's what being a Nikke is. It's these girls who sacrifice themselves essentially, and then when they're constructing the bodies or whatever, they become their idolized selves. So back to the present, she mentions that she likes showing her hobby off, like the S&M stuff, and that she really enjoys it, and that the pain she feels helps her to remember that she's not a helpless girl anymore. And so it's got like the whole sexual fetish, but also it's just like it's comforting to her that she can feel pain, because it means she's not this helpless girl lying in a bed anymore, that she has some sort of control over her life and some power. So it's kind of darkly sweet. Like most things in this game that are sweet are also like, okay, I mean that's horrible. I mean like horribly sad, not like horrible in a bad way, but it's like, it's nice. And then at that point she kisses our neck. And then the commander kisses her on the lips, and she's like, ooh, I like this. Maybe later on you can kiss me somewhere else. Wink, wink, wink. And it's like, on her pussy. Anyway, who knows? And then later on, even more, we're at a place, we're just kind of at a waiting room when Mahadara walks in, and then she ponders where we are going to kiss her today. And that wraps up her Bond story. Now on to Uni, the diminutive member of the Wardress squad. So Uni is walking around the outpost, smacking people with her whip, and seemingly getting off about the whole situation. She particularly is harassing Ainz for some reason, who really enjoys. She really enjoys it, and Ainz comes to us as the commander to complain. We explain to her that Uni, she shows her affection through this like distribution of pain and suffering, but we agree that it's kind of gone too far, that if people don't want to engage, like if there's not consent essentially, then it's not okay. And that's why her and Mihara have a good relationship, because Mihara gets off on feeling pain and Uni gets off on distributing pain. Good stuff. Mihara's around at this point, and she also mentions that Uni can only feel only feel stuff when touching others, that she doesn't feel like emotional stuff when she's not engaged in the kind of contact, which is why the distribution of pain like helps her feel alive and whatnot. And that Uni started off with like caresses and touches and stuff, but it became like not enough. So the distribution of pain is really where she's going to get her bang for her buck on her emotional feeling emotions. And then Neon steps in at this time and is like, well, why doesn't she just hit you? You love it. And Mihara's like, you bet I do. I think she should. But I think Uni gets a little greedy, and she doesn't necessarily enjoy the fact that I also get off and enjoy it as well. Lord. So that's why she's going around distributing pleasure to other people. That being said, Mihara states that the whole situation is getting kind of bad in control, and that Uni's going to start getting in trouble at Missilis headquarters as well, if we can't kind of like figure out what's going on with her and help her kind of control it or get like actually what she wants out of this. So it eventually comes down to the fact that Uni's just not very good at communicating her thoughts and feelings and like why she's doing what she's doing, and so Mihara feels like we would be a good candidate as the commander to go and help Uni figure this stuff out. Because yeah, why not? Ainz and Rappy, who Neon like meandered out of there a bit ago, agree and kind of all, and so they're like, hey, yeah, you should do that. So we agree, and then after we agree, Mihara like guilts us. And I'm like, bro, I'm already helping this chick out into helping Uni. Which is kind of a cunty move, but like whatever. And so we go find Uni, who's out about smacking people, and tell her to stop. At that point, we take her to an alleyway, and she reveals that she communicates best with people through pain, and that the only way to like truly communicate with someone for her is in the moment of distribution of pain, and that she can like read people and all this stuff. So then we tell her like, all right, well, hit us. And she's like, I'm not going to hit you. You're human. I'm going to kill you. Or cause like serious injury. And he's like, and we're like, no, we got to help you. And she's like, no, it's not fun. I don't get any pleasure out of hitting you because it's like too much damage, right? And it's not about the damage. It's about inflicting. It's like the misogyny, the masochism aspect or whatever that gets her like turned on or whatever. Anyway, so eventually we convince her to whip us anyway, and she does. But at first she seems to like be like, yeah, this is working out, and then all of a sudden she becomes like very disinterested in the whole situation. And she smacks a couple more times, like whatever. Then we get a lecture from Uni about communication. And this is where she really goes off on like, she can tell that the noises we're giving her when we whip her are, or when she whips us, are not true noises, that we're kind of like making up noises for her. And that's not true communication, that essentially we're like lying to her, and she doesn't like that because it's offensive. And that there's, in the moment of like pain distribution transference, there's like a communication that's done, whether that's through the person inflicting the pain to the individual speaking to them, or the person receiving the pain. And that's how you can communicate a lot of information. We're like, huh. So later on, we Ainz and Neon are talking about some crazy person who's going around the arc, telling people to him. And then eventually they realize it's us, because we wander up and we're like, hey, can you guys hit me? Because we're trying to learn this communication style of Uni, so we're trying to train ourselves by like getting people to hit us and trying to like understand what they're trying to communicate through their attacks and whatnot. And that people are seeing us as like a pervert around the arc because they're going around asking people to smack us around, which, yeah. And then when Ainz and Neon try to talk us out of doing this, we're like, no, we got to help Uni. This is part of like being a good friend and all that stuff. And then at some point through the hitting and like all this training and practice, we realize that we're starting to understand people's emotions through like the act. So when we're hit, you know, there's a whole bunch of different Nikkes that hit us, and we start being able to like understand like I think it's like vesties feeling like ecstasy, and there's butterflies in Amelia, and that Yunhua, there's only silence, for example, right? These are all Nikkes from the Absolute Squad, which we'll get into chapter 3 or 4. So then that we're finally able to like understand Uni's form of communication, and so now it's time to go track her down. So we message her and asking her to go at another round for this communication. We meet back up in this this alleyway, and then she starts hitting us. And then she realizes that we're finally able to communicate, that she can hear what we're saying, and that she likes it and she keeps hitting. At this point, though, we call her out on not doing two-way communication. So essentially what Uni's doing is she's not actually communicating back. She's giving a response back based on like how the person's reaction is. So she's feeding a response. She's feeding a communication response back to us as a commander, and it seems like most people, based on like how they're feeling about receiving the pain, instead of actually giving like honest and true communication. So we talk about that, and then Uni finally admits that that's actually not communication either, and that she's not involving herself in actual true communication. And then we talk about how she's been lonely, and how she wants to, you know, it's like the whole like people judge her for the way she is kind of thing. So she's trying to give them what they want so that she can not be lonely and that she can connect with people, and that she's isolated herself, and that her ability to communicate without kind of giving like not canned responses, but like the response that she thinks the other person wants to get has become very diminished outside of like Mihara. And so then we promise to help her find her lost voice, and then we begin the communication sessions. Later on, Ainz and Neon are gossiping again. They're talking about some other perverts in town in the arc wandering around, and they call them like those who speak, and it's a duo that are going around hitting people, and then it's resulting in like something questionable actions occurring after that. At this point, Mihara comes back in, and she said, they're like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" She's like, "Oh, I'm waiting for Uni and the protagonist, or the commander. They've been out doing stuff." And at that point, Uni and the commander, we come walking back in, and then Uni hits Ainz, who she loves to hit, and then Ainz starts to feel a certain way, and she's trying to like parse what her fucking like reaction to this whole situation is from being whipped, because it's like a totally different experience. Because now that Uni's actually communicating, right? Because again, the whole point of the communication from the very beginning, it's not that she's not talking to people, it's that she's not good. She's degraded her ability to communicate, but through the training we've done for us and through her, she's now able to communicate through distribution of pain. And so Ainz is like confused about the whole thing, and then she gets scared that she's having masochistic tendencies, and so Neon like nopes the fuck out of there, because she's like, "Nah, I'm out of here." At that point, Mihara's like, "Hooray, you did it! I feel so vindicated in sending the commander to go out and like help you learn how to communicate, because now you're able to communicate better, and this is great." And then Uni hits Mihara, which expresses the point that she's jealous that Mihara's spending so much time with the commander, and that she wants to spend time with her as well. And then Mihara is also jealous because there's been so much quote-unquote communication between Uni and the commander. So so she wants to be involved, and she's tired of being out in the cold. And at this point, Mihara asks Uni if she still feels lonely, and Uni's like, "No, I don't anymore. It feels great. The commander's helped me like learn how to communicate, and that now I can know people, and I can talk back to people in the way I actually feel, and I can accept who I truly am, and I'm no longer alone." And then Mihara's about to like say something back when Uni like cuts her off with a whipping, and then they enjoy their like sadist communication experience. And at that point, the commander goes to take his leave, and then they like drag us back in for some three-way quote unquote communication. And then as the scene ends, it's like the hallways echo with like the whippings and laughing and other forms of communication, quote unquote. So we're going to talk about next is the second event that came out in, I think it was like November or December of 2023. It's called Hightech Toys. It focuses on Mantis. Mantis is the elite squad of Missilis, who is the company that's kind of ran by Sayun. So we're going to be introduced to Mantis. The reason I'm not doing their Bond stories now is because they play a prominent role in the main story later on. And so we'll go through their Bond stories after that kind of arrives. And this event is supposed to take place before we do the prominent story with them. So that's going to be a lot bigger deal later on down the road. So we'll hit that up at that point. Anyway, so Mantis is just hanging around Missilis headquarters watching the news. And apparently there's a whole bunch of mass-produced Nikkes that have disappeared. They've gone up to the surface and left, and predominantly Missilis has had like the biggest impact, and so their quarterly finances are going to be the most deeply affected. And at some point in the news story, Ingrid, who is the CEO of Elysion, it makes a comment about how Missilis is not taking care of their mass-produced Nikkes and that they need to give them better combat training or better equipment or something. They make a comment about it. This leads right into us being introduced to Maxwell, who's kind of the head of Mantis. She's like the sane center. So the way it's set up, just kind of like a brief, is that Mantis again is the elite force of, it's like they're almost like the Black Ops for Sayun, but they're not Black Ops because they're very forward facing, like they're very strong, they have the best equipment, Sayun likes them the most, and this story kind of focuses on that relationship and how other Missilis and Nikkes kind of view them, but at the same time they're kind of goofballs. And so Laplace, her deal is that she's a superhero. She's like the Superman of the group, right? We got to do this for the people. We got to protect the people. We got to help the people. And then there's Drake, who is like a villain, quote unquote, or like I'd almost call her more of like a Wolverine or. I mean, she claims to be like a supervillain, but she doesn't really do anything supervillainery, and she just kind of tags along. But her and Laplace get into a lot of fights about what's better, being a villain or being a hero, and then they kind of get into hijinks because of that. And then Maxwell just kind of like rolls her eyes about the whole thing. She's also one of the more sexual Nikkes when it comes to terms to the relationship with the commander. As we saw in this video, Mihara and Yuni they got the whole sadomasochism thing that they're very deep into, and there's a lot of implied like sexual interactions with the commander in their Bond stories, but it's more of the kind of like sadomasochistic point of view. Maxwell makes like kind of not in this story, but she makes a lot of comments that are like, okay, and then we're gonna fuck, right? The other one who does that is Maiden. We'll get to her later as well, but a lot of times it's more like holding hands or kisses or like kind of people being embarrassed about the relationship with the commander, who is us. All right. So anyway, Maxwell's like thinking about like the story of the Nikkes and whatnot. And then there's some mass-produced Nikkes like standing around, and they make some snide comments about Mantis being like, oh, what do you guys don't have to worry about any of this because they treat you, Sayun treats you like a real person, and she treats us like garbage. And then Maxwell's like, you haven't fucking clue what you're talking about. And they're like, whatever, you're just spoiled. And Laplace and Drake get into like a weird comment battle about being a hero and being a villain. And then Laplace is like, I'm going to go save the day. And she like leaps out the window, shattering the window in the process because she's making like a heroic exit. And then Drake's like, wait, you can't, the villain's better. And then she like bashes through the door to like make her villainous escape or whatever, or like go. And then Maxwell's like, Jesus Christ, give me strength. And then they get before they like smash their way out, they get an order from Sayun. They're like, hey, she's like, go to the surface and figure out what the fuck's going on and stop whatever is happening from happening. Like, get our stock prices back up. And so that's where they head. Meanwhile, that craziness is all going on. We, as the commander, are meeting with Anderson, and we're there to discuss the issue. Like, oh, there's all these mass-produced Nikkes that are missing, and Sayun sending Mantis, the squad up there. But squad, they have to have a commander, so we're gonna have you go do it because you're the hero of this game. So you go do everything. But by order of Sayun, because she's she's one of the CEO's top 3 companies, she can kind of like throw her weight around, and she's like, I want that commander, but I don't want the counters. So the counters are not invited. So we have to head up, and immediately, and with these side stories and the Bond stories, there's kind of like a loose canonization. That's why I have them as like a separate thing, because there's like the main story But the Bond stories and side events and some of the characters, it's almost like it's like almost like a totally different universe, right? Just because there's no way to predict the order people are going to like pull their gotcha girlfriends or anything like that, or even unlock these events. Or like, let's say you logged in like me like a year into this whole shebang and like you missed all these events. Now you can like go back and unlock them. That's how I have the clips and played through them and stuff. Also, if you just want to read through them all, you can, their like fan Wikipedia page has like a pretty good detailed like they kind of like doing the same thing, but you got to read it, that I do most of the time. So you can kind of read through over there kind of all the events, or most of the events, and then most of the Bond stories as well. Okay. Anyway, so happy Laplace, who again we've never met up to this point in our storytelling adventures, is like, oh hey Birdie, that's what she calls us. All the the Nikkes all tend to have like funny names for like the commander that are different. Sometimes it's just commander, but like Laplace calls us Birdie. She calls a lot of people Birdie. It's like part of her thing. And the other interesting thing about Mattis is that they're all named after like philosophers. So Drake, Laplace, and Maxwell. Okay. Where was I? Oh, and then I can't remember what Drake calls us. It's something like, I can't remember. I don't use her. Like Laplace is in my main party for like most of the main story when I'm playing through the actual game. So like I have a lot of interactions with her. But Drake is not very good. She just got a treasure at him, but it's going to go off on a tangent. Anyway, and Maxwell's good too. And Maxwell calls us cutie, right? Which is kind of more in line with her, like more upfront, like, hey, we're going to go bang, right? Like general attitude. Okay, so Laplace and Drake, everyone's like, oh, hey, what's up? Oh, Drake calls us an asshole. That's right. She's like, she calls an asshole, but she's like, what the fuck are you doing here? And then Maxwell's like, what do you, like, hey, we know you have to be here because commanders and shit, but we're Mattis. We don't need you here. So just kind of like hang back and we'll take care of it and hang out. And also what's unnecessary is an operator. So an operator is shifty, right? So the operator kind of gives us intel for the mission, and she does a lot of like the searching and keeps communications up and all that. But Maxwell mentions that between Maxwell herself and Drake, that they have all the capabilities to search for raptures, to evaluate the scenery for alpha particles and other dangers and hazards, and to do scans. And that Drake in particular is very, 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 very adept at like tracking things. So like the need for someone like Shifty is completely unnecessary. And even though it's standard procedure to have her along anyway, that because it's Sayun, she's like, no, this is like a Black Ops thing essentially in regards to, she doesn't want anyone to know this is happening because it makes Mattis look weak, or not Mattis, Missilis to look weak, and you know their share prices are down, so that's like one of her concerns, is to kind of keep up appearances. The one thing Maxwell does mention is that Drake's and Maxwell's like abilities to like detect and search and stuff, they consume a lot of battery life, and so they're, they just got to be careful. Because they can run out of like charge, and then they'll be in trouble because they're machines and stuff. Okay, so we head over to the where the distress signal is, and we find absolutely nothing. So at that point, Drake uses her detect skills, like her super detect skills, because she's not using it constantly because of the battery drain, and she also finds nothing. And then Laplace uses her completely fucking made up heroic sense of like the world to find out where the Nikkes are. And then she's like, they're over there by that group of raptures that are just kind of like dicking around. So everyone's like, all right, fuck it, why not? Let's go kill them. So we do, and again, we find nothing. That point, Drake again uses her super detectability and does find a mass-produced Nikke. So as we approach, we find her that she's missing an arm and 2 legs, and that otherwise she's fine, right? Because she's a Nikke, so they can just get repaired and be good to go. We also, and these early events have some mistranslation in English, because I don't think they were really like, I don't know if the shift up was really like all in on like the American market until this game kind of picked up around the half-year anniversary, from my understanding. So they have this thing. They call it a brain. What do they call it? They call it a brain haven, and later it's called the brain shelter. And the brain shelter, I'm pretty sure, is like what it's called from then. That's first saw. Because when I first saw the term brain haven, I was like, oh, what the fuck's a brain haven? But a brain shelter is where. So if you remember from before, as long as the Nikke's head is okay, the brain is really the most important part. You can reconstruct the entire body as long as you have the brain, because the brain is like the home of the consciousness or whatever, and the soul, if you will, in this universe. And so when this brain haven or brain shelter has a whole bunch of heads in it from all the mass-produced Nikkes that the mass-produced Nikke that we saved, that we found here, she like collected for like her whole squad. So it's like all her friends and stuff, right? Because these mass-produced Nikkes, just because they're mass-produced Nikkes, don't mean they're not like also girls who have been transformed. They're just not like super duper special. They're kind of just like pimped out to do like menial tasks, to take care of like policing or to do other kind of like mundane things. Go up and just collect something. They're not really built. They're built for combat because they're going to run into raptures, but they're often more often than not just like sent to the surface to like get some items or get some resources and come back and avoid combat at all costs. But if they need to, they can fight. Because that's what like the special squads are for, is for the actual like fighting and more dangerous missions. And so we go to like help her, but the mass-produced Nikke gets like very concerned, and she's like, "No, stay away." Something. And then Maxwell is like, "Hey, calm the fuck down. We're here to save you." Oh, thank goodness. And then at this point, Maxwell's like, "Okay, well, I got some spare parts. I can like fix her up so that she can at least walk. We don't have to carry her, and then we can get this thing kind of figured out." And that's when she reveals that before she became a Nikke, she was a researcher at Missilis. And we see that quite, like, that happens more than you think. We run into several more Nikkes that were researchers at Missilis or other companies doing whatever kind of tech stuff or entertainment, and then they converted over to being a Nikke that had nothing to do with, like, being combat related, if you will. But now they're involved in that because they're specialized and all that stuff. She also mentions... It's funny at this point because she's like, "I've told you this story before," and according to how we're playing through, it's like we have never spoken before this moment. So that's kind of funny. So she gets to work repairing the Nikke while Laplace and Drake pull guard duty. As Maxwell finishes, we discuss that she does this all the time. That because Mattis is like a special squad, they have to go out, and then more often than not, she's got to do like repairs on the Nikkes, and that's something we saw Rappy do with Marion. In like chapter 0, I think, and that despite Mattis's like what is it called, curated reputation, they find themselves in a lot of like odd struggles, and then they have to repair and like recover, and that there's also the battery charging, kind of relating back to the fact that like some of their skills are really a drain, and so they got to like find ways to charge their batteries or switch batteries out in the field so they can continue to be successful. And then she kind of laughs and says, "Don't bring it up to Laplace. She'll deny it completely," because she's going to talk about how we're invincible and no one can ever stop her, and she's the hero who's undefeatable and whatnot. At that point, the mass-produced Nikke stirs from her like being knocked out or whatever, and Maxwell is like, "All right, she's good to go." The mass-produced Nikke is like, "Oh, I don't know what happened. We were just on our thing, and like we had like a radar, and like all of a sudden this rapture, this Tyrant class rapture, like pops up out of the ground, and there's no way for us to tell. And I think this equipment's broken." And what we get a lot in this from the mass-produced Nikkes is that Missilis doesn't really take care of their Nikkes that well, especially the mass-produced ones. They give them like really old equipment or broken equipment all the time, and a lot of them are jealous, specifically of Mattis, because Mattis again is like the face of the company, and so they get a lot of like screen time and a lot of like the best equipment, and Sayun's always like touting them around, and so they're like, "You guys don't understand what it's like to be you don't understand our struggle. You're so much better than us, and they actually care about you and stuff." And Maxwell, the rest of Maxwell, Laplace, and Drake always kind of like roll their eyes or like, "You don't understand what you're talking about," or like, "Shut the fuck up, that's not how it is," right? And they're like, "Whatever, you're just an asshole." Anyway, so they got the mass-produced Nikke and her crew got sent up to collect an artifact, and then the whole thing that happened where they got jumped. And so then Maxwell looks at the equipment. She's like, "No, that's fine. Drake, can you detect anything?" And Maxwell and Drake determine that it's this rapture must have like an invisibility shield, which means they just can't be detected. Like our sonar, it's like a stealth rapture, which makes it harder. That's why this rapture's been able to like jump not just the Missilis Nikke squads, but like a whole bunch of different all the companies like Nikke's mass-produced Nikke squads. The mass-produced Nikke again kind of talks about how Mattis is a bunch of assholes, and then Laplace like snaps at her and is like, "You got to be a hero. You got to stop complaining and do your job. And with that attitude, you're never going to be a hero." At that point, the mass-produced Nikke freaks out and like rushes at Laplace, like screaming, and Maxwell like stops her, and then we tell like, "Hey, Laplace, cut it out." Like she's just a little traumatized. At that point, Maxwell's like, "All right, time to go." So Laplace calls Sayun, tell her what happened, and the Sayun's like, "Hell no, you're going to stay there and you're going to capture this Nikke, or you're going to capture this rapture." And then the mass-produced Nikke again freaks out because we're all going to die, and that like the brain cage only has like 7 days, and so there's not enough time, or there's like 3 days left or something, and there's not enough time for to capture this rapture, and then at the same time get her friends back. So they're all going to die, and this is like crazy, and that you guys don't understand. And then Maxwell essentially is like, "Well, this is what we're doing." And Laplace goes on another rant about being a hero, capturing it, and that 3 days is that's fine. We'll be totally fine. There's no issue whatsoever. So then some time goes by, and we continue to not find this Rapture. We're discussing more about its stealth mechanic and all that stuff. And Drake keeps she stops to use her ability, and Laplace talks a lot about being a hero. Finally, Drake senses something, and so we head out there. A whole day goes by at this point. There's still no Rapture, none of this. The mass-produced Nikke again mentions that we need to contact Sayun for like an extraction, because we're not going to find this thing, and without being extracted, these Nikkes are all going to die, like all their friends and stuff. And then Maxwell's like, no, we're not going to that's not going to happen. We're not going to evac. We gotta complete the mission. And she's like, you guys are just assholes. You don't care about anyone but yourself. And that Sayun will do anything for you guys. Like, you gotta think about other people and not just be assholes. And then Maxwell explains that, like, listen, we are the best, so there's no way to ask for help. Like, there's no one gonna come. And besides, it would besmirch because it's gonna besmirch our pride. So the only excuse we would ever have to be able to contact Sayun for extraction is if we ran into a heretic. At that point, Raptures show up, and Laplace tells Maxwell to come help her, because superhero teams all work together, so they all pop off to do that, leaving us with the mass-produced Nikke just kind of hanging out. When Laplace runs off, she drops something, and the mass-produced Nikke runs over and grabs it and says, I'll hold on to this, don't worry about it. And we're like, okay. Afterwards, the mass-produced Nikke shows that the thing that she picked up was Laplace's cell phone. And then she goes off again, and Maxwell's like, what are you going to do with that? And the mass-produced Nikke's like, I'm going to call for evac right now. And Maxwell's like, all right, go do what you want. If you're not a coward, like, make it happen. So then she does. She pretends to be Laplace and texts Sayun for an evac. And Sayun is like, who is this? That's not Laplace. Not as Laplace would say anything. She would never do that. And then Sayun's like, oh, you know what? I think you are Laplace. In fact, I think you need more of a challenge. You probably think this is too easy. So here's the deal. So she ups the stakes, where she's like, if you guys don't return in like the next day with the Rapture in tow, like, I'm just going to I'm going to destroy all of you and then make a new Mattis squad with somebody else, someone who's actually going to be able to do their job. So you better do it, because now the stakes are raised, and now you got a time limit and all this stuff. And then Maxwell finally steps in, and she's like, oh, hey, sorry, we were just doing a communications check. And Sayun's like, ha, that's funny. And then she hangs up. And then after the call, Maxwell points out that Mattis is not special. At the end of the day, none of them are human, and Sayun doesn't treat any of them as anything else besides expensive toys. High-tech toys, right? The name of the event. And then the mass-produced Nikke is like flabbergasted. She's like, how could she treat you like that? Everyone's so jealous of how she treats you so well. And again, Maxwell restates that, like, look, we're going to capture this Rapture and save your friends. Just calm the fuck down. So let's go and stop complaining. At that point, finally, Drake tracks down the Rapture and its harvester, which is just, that's the name of the Rapture. It's a giant, like, spider-looking kind of thing. It's colossal, and they're like, wow, it's so colossal. And then the mass-produced Nikke confirms, like, yep, that's the one. So then Laplace gives, like, her 14th speech about being heroic in front of humans and about what it means to be a Nikke and how she's going to do it. And then she calls to us specifically as the commander and is like, are you brave or cowardly? And so we say we're brave. And then she declares, I'm going to charge the Rapture. You guys are good. Go find an elevator to the Ark. And so so she runs off by herself to fight the Rapture. So we do. Maxwell and Drake are like, okay. And so we all go and head to the elevator and find one that's going down. And at that point, we become slightly concerned about Laplace. So we mentioned, like, hey, now that we found the elevator, maybe we should go back and help her. And then Maxwell's like, no. And then we begin to have, like, a philosophical discussion about what it means to be a Nikke versus a human, and, like, the role and, like, the purpose of existence and all this stuff. And it's not that deep, but it's mostly about, like, Laplace is going to excel as long as she believes she's a superhero. And so the more you can encourage her to act the way she's acting, which is to act like Superman essentially, and like unbeatable superhero that's there to save people, the stronger she'll be and the more successful she'll be. So you going to help essentially is going to hurt her sense of understanding of, like, the reality of the world, and it could cause, like, a mind switch. But at the same time, it's just, she's not going to be as effective. And so she'll be fine. She'll get it done. You just got to, like, hang tight, like we're Mattis, we'll be fine. Because that's how she was created, like her sense of purpose, right? Because when these girls become Nikkes, they become like their idolized self, and so Laplace's idolized self is like a superhero, and so that's her role. She needs to function in that role to be effective. And And then at that point, she's like, right, Laplace? And Laplace is like, hey, I'm here, I'm back, I got him. And then Maxwell gives her a hard time because she's like, how's your battery? And Laplace is like, oh, it's like empty completely. And so then we return victorious. And Sayun does, we're hanging out with Mantis, and so in Missilis, while Sayun and Laplace are doing like a press conference back at headquarters, to the people saying like, hey, we got the harvester, the mass-produced Nikkes, like Missilis stocks go back up, like Sayun's super excited, and all that stuff. And then this was filmed earlier because Laplace is here. So Drake's like, why are you so scared? Why are you talking so quietly during this press conference? Laplace's like, I know, I should have shouted louder. I'm so upset with myself. And then all of a sudden, like, the mass-produced Nikke we saved, she shows up and she's like, hey, I just want to thank you guys for saving me and all my friends. And Laplace is like, next time you can be a hero and something. She goes off like another heroic thing. And the mass-produced Nikke is like, whatever, I was just trying to be nice and you're an asshole. And then she like wanders off. And then Maxwell's like, what's her fucking problem? And then Laplace says that is like, hey, what's her problem? And Maxwell's like, don't worry about it, she'll never understand. And then she tells Laplace to go do something, so she jumps out of the window again, shattering it. And then Drake shatters the door, running after her to do the same thing. And it's like, oh my gosh. So then we have like our final conversation with Maxwell. It's like, what does it mean to be heroes? And if they were all like that before Sayun made them. And then Maxwell kind of like dodges the question about herself. She doesn't want to talk about it. But she mentions that Drake and Laplace, she doesn't know exactly what they were thinking, but that both of them became Nikkes specifically because they wanted to be tools for Sayun. Right? We don't get any more background on them at that point. But again, when we question her motivations, Maxwell states that she doesn't know what caused her human self to want to become a Nikke because her human self is dead. That person is dead, and she can't read her mind. She can't go back in time. And then she turns it over to us and says, it's really your decision. Do you think we're heroic? Do you think we're doing this because we want to? Or are we just Sayun's toys? And that's the end. So excellent event. Very fun. Nice character development. All that good stuff. The final thing, again, is that we're going to talk about with these kind of interludes is the relics. So the relics we collected from Chapter 2 are a man who is stuck in a bunker during the beginning of like the Rapture Wars, and he's like, oh, I'm staying here, I got enough food for like a year, I should be fine. And then we get like 3 journal entries by him because the relics they always come in 3s. And so the first one's in like February, and he writes about how he got this bunker, he's waiting to be rescued, the army should do a good job. He mentions like these insect-like creatures that they're calling the Raptures, but he feels fine, he can like hang out here for a while. And then like 6 months go by or whatever. Yeah, 6 months about. So now it's August, and now he's becoming worried because he's not been rescued. And the last thing he saw on TV was that, you know, they were winning the war. The humans were defeating the Raptures, everything was good. Like he was definitely like eating that propaganda from CNN or MSNBC at that point. And then he's like, all right, well, they haven't rescued me yet, but we clearly won the war, so I'm going to put out my SOS signal a little stronger in the bunker to make sure we're good. And then a few months later in December, we get the last letter, and he said he ran out of food, and even though he has plenty of power, he needs to go get some food, so he's going to head to the surface. And you know what? He'll probably be seen as like a hero because he like stayed in the bunker and like survived, and they'll get some interviews, and he's kind of excited to go meet the rest of humanity who've like defeated the Raptures and all this stuff. And so he really has no concerns. Of course he's dead, but that's that. Anyway, so go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and we'll get to chapter 3 next week. Cool. Catch y'all later. Bye.